Let's start the recording again. All right. I muted everyone. If you need to speak, you can raise a hand or you can unmute yourself to ask a question. We will save most of the questions. Actually, all the questions we'll save until the end. So if you have those, you can put them in the comments and I'll make sure to pull them up there. Or you can just save them and ask them at the end. But and I'll try to let people hop in whenever I see them. I know that we have people coming in and out right now. A lot of people at work. Got messages from some people who said that they had something come up and not going to be able to make it. So the replay will be available. We'll have everything afterwards. But thank you all for being here. This is the I think the third or fourth time. I think the fourth time I've hosted this event here in Siena. A little bit about myself. My name is Kyle Pfaffe. I moved to Siena in 2016. I live on Angelo Loop. I own a Castle Rock home. My kids go to Huddle Middle School and Curley Elementary here in town, and I've been to Veterans as well. But I've lived here for 5 years. As of May 5th, it'll be 5 years here. Gotten to know a lot of you. Got to know a lot of people in the community, and thankful that you're able to join us here today. I hope this is going to be helpful for you. A lot of people are here because property values are going up, and you got in the mail here in the last week or so, you got a notice of your tax value, which was probably a little bit of sticker shock. As pretty much everyone's aware at this point, that the Austin, Texas market everywhere is hot. Siena has been crazy as well. Get a lot of questions from homeowners, or should I sell my home? My recommendation is that your house is always going to be worth more tomorrow or next month or next year. All our indications are telling us, so don't feel any pressure to move. Hopefully those people that are moving are not going to put too much pressure on our tax bills. But don't feel like you're in some sort of bubble and you got to get out of here. Stay in Siena as long as you can. That being said, a lot of people are also asking me for something that I've been preparing, which is a unique property review. I'm going to put the link in the chat for how do you get one of these. Has a lot of data, kind of like a 401k review for your 401k that you get each year. That's the type of information you're going to find in there. That's going to tell you what's going on in the Siena market. But my specialty is helping people discern when to move, how to move, if they should move. That's my area of expertise. I'm not an expert in property taxes. I'm not an expert in property tax protests, property tax evaluations. And when I need an expert in the field that I can't serve my clients, I always turn to the experts in those fields. That's why today we're joined by Texas Tax Protest. I hope I'm getting that name right. They're the experts in protesting your property taxes, and I'm excited to have them join us here. Their team is here. They're going to share with us a lot of information about how to protest your taxes, what kind of questions you should ask or answer, and they are the experts in that field. So I'm going to turn it over to them. They're going to share some information with us. They have some quizzes, some door prizes, stuff like that to keep us engaged. At the end, I'm going to be sending out, I'll be putting in the notes, the whole deck for today's presentation, so you can go back and review that. You're going to have the information for Texas Tax Protest if you want to have them serve you to protest your taxes for you. And then at the end, also, anyone that had signed up, you're going to receive an email link with a replay of the event as well. So thank you all for joining. And at this point, I'm going to turn over to Sarah with Texas Tax Protest.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. I really appreciate, this opportunity. I know we value the experience and being able to share all of our information, and I appreciate everybody for showing up. I hope you find it really useful. So let me figure out how to screen share and we'll go from there. Okay, I think it's sort of working. Okay, so yeah, we're here because we're going to talk about how to protest your property taxes. So again, thank you, Kyle, for putting this all together and giving us this opportunity to share the information. We hope everybody finds it really valuable. So hi guys, we're Texas Tax Protest, formerly, or not formally, but currently known as TTP for short. We've been around for just over a decade now, and the whole point of us existing is to sort of help everybody navigate this property tax process and just make it easier overall. So I think that's really important that everybody knows. Um, we also understand really the importance of building these long lasting relationships, not only with the counties, but also with our clients. We know this process can be really valuable, and we want you to be able to come to us with questions or any of your property tax needs. So a little bit more about us. We currently service about 45,000 clients all over the state of Texas, and that includes all types of properties. So it's not just residential homes or your primary residence, but also rental properties, commercial buildings, things of that nature. So we don't necessarily just service the Williamson-Travis area, but all over. So some about who you'd be talking to if you call in or send us emails. That's going to be Odette, Blair, Cree, and myself. So Odette is our vice president. She's amazing. She's been a real estate agent for a very long time and really understands all facets of this process. She's also one of our licensed agents, so she's there for questions. Blair is going to be also one of our licensed agents, and she specializes in the Williamson-Travis area. So any super specific questions, she's going to be your go-to person. And then lastly, you have Cree and myself. We're both licensed, but we primarily deal with just the residential side of this whole process and management of investor portfolios. So if you have a bunch of rental properties or something that are really sort of breaking the bank in property taxes, call me. That's what I'm here for. Okay, so let's talk about the stuff you guys are here for. Let's talk property taxes. So we're going to cover a couple of the documents that you'll receive throughout this process, one of which is going to be that notice of appraised value that you guys just got in the mail. This document is extremely valuable. It's going to give you a bunch of really important information. Typically, this goes out middle of April, and it's going to tell you what your property value is for that year. It's going to tell you when you have to file your protest by. Let me just tell you, if you miss that deadline, there's pretty much nothing we can do to give you that opportunity to protest. So make sure that you take note of this date, which is typically going to be either May 15th and this year, May 17th, to file that protest, or 30 days after you get it, but it'll be noted on your notice. Another piece of information that's going to be included in here is going to be your estimated taxes for the year. This can be part of that sticker shock Kyle was talking about. Property values are going up like crazy, and this is going to be how you gauge how much you're going to pay in property taxes if you decide you're not going to protest for that year. So again, very important information is included here. The second type of document that you'll receive with regards to your property taxes is going to be your tax statement or your property tax bill. Starting in November of every year, you're going, well, either you or your mortgage company is going to get a copy of this, and it's going to tell you what your taxes are for that year. It's the actual bill. Let's see. These property taxes have to be paid by January 31st of the following year. And if they aren't paid by then, you get late bills, and that's no fun. So for example, this year, you'll receive your property tax bill in November sometime, and those have to be paid by January 31st, 2022. So let's get down to more of the process. What does that look like? So a protest is commonly referred to, or your opportunity to appeal this value is what we call a protest. You have to do this because if you don't, then you're sort of stuck with whatever value the county comes up with. This value that you're assigned is the value of the property as of January 1st. So you may get your notice of value in April or May, but that value was set a long time ago. With this process, you have a couple of options. You could either protest on your own, which is absolutely fine. You can sort of learn the process and what that looks like, or you can hire a firm like us. There's a couple of benefits to hiring a firm like us. Homeowners that file a protest on their own typically only have about a 29% chance of being able to receive the reduction. If you hire a firm, that percentage increases over double at about 70% success rate. So there's definitely benefits to hiring a professional. Keep in mind, like we've already talked about, you have to file your protest by that May 17th date or 30 days after you get your notice. If you miss this date, there's really not a whole lot that we can do. Talking about the process itself, there's two types of review that can occur. You have the informal review, which is sort of a one-on-one meeting with the county appraiser to negotiate in a more conversational way. And then there's the ARB hearing, which is the formal process. If you're not happy with that informal review, the ARB is where you go. Basically, it's set up like the homeowner or your representative and the county appraiser present evidence back and forth, and then there's a panel of 3 members that sort of judge or create a final ruling on that value. So it's much more formal, and in my opinion, harder to get reductions that way. So visually, what does that county process look like? As we've talked about, January 1st is when that value is set at. In April and May, you're going to get that notice that says, hey, this is what your new value is, and here are your protest options. In May and July, or May through July, this is when you actually have the opportunity to go through that process informally and formally. July through September, this is when all the people that you pay property taxes to in the taxing jurisdictions adopt and set their budgets and the rates for that year so that they can actually invoice you for your property taxes. And then the very last step of the year is to send out those tax bills so that they can collect the money and allocate as they need to. How does that sort of follow along with what we do as a firm? It's very, very similar. So January 1st, those values are set and we start preparing for people to ask us questions. April and May, when those notices go out, we're here to sort of sign up new clients and let them know what that process looks like from our standpoint. In May, or that deadline, May 15th, that's when we actually file your protest. And then of course, afterwards, we start to meet with the county appraisers and do that one-on-one informal meeting. If we're not happy with those results, just like as a homeowner, we then go ahead and escalate to ARBs, July through September. And then of course, we have results that we need to just let you know what your new property value is. So we'll let you know in that time frame. And then lastly, of course, we have to sort of wind down the year and finish invoicing. That would happen in the October, November timeframe whenever you guys start getting your tax bills. And then of course the process starts over. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what that process sort of looks like. Now let's talk about who's really coming up with these values, what the valuation process looks like. So this is going to be more technical, so bear with me. So prior to 1979, this whole process was designated to one entity. One person had the job, one group of people had the job of coming up with values, sending out, figuring out what taxes are going to be, et cetera, et cetera. After 1979, we established what we call, the Pfaffe bill, which separated the central appraisal districts, or those who come up with your value, and the tax assessors, or those who collect the taxes and sort of pay out monies that way. It's kind of like a checks and balances. So the process really works better and it's depoliticized this way. Okay, so let's talk the valuation process. So this appraisal that you receive is really just an opinion of value. You have a different opinion of value of your home other than the appraiser that values your home versus what I think your home is worth. So it's all different, and it's all dependent on the scope of work or why we're doing the appraisal. For us, we're focusing on the opinion of value for taxing purposes. So now, how do they come up with these values? The Central Appraisal District uses what we call a mass appraisal model. Why do they use a mass appraisal model? Because they need something that's really efficient that allows them to come up with property values for tons of properties. What each county in Texas has to do is value property once every 3 years. That's not always the case, and we see new valuations come out all the time. But think about having to come up with a value for millions of properties across your county once a year. That's a huge job. So that's why they do things in a mass model or something that's more efficient. So just again, to reiterate, a mass appraisal is the process of valuing a universe or group of properties as of a given date. In this case, it's January 1st. And it is a real process. It's proven to work as far as like being able to come up with a general value for a property. So how do they do this? The counties or the appraisers are going to group a bunch of properties in what we call neighborhoods. Now, this is not neighborhoods like we think of them like subdivisions. It's just basically a universe of properties that they've chosen to put together because of the similarities of these types of properties so they can create trends. That's a lot of words to be like, okay, we're putting a bunch of properties together to make my job easier. So what does that look like? Well, it looks kind of like this. A county neighborhood is designated by the blue line. So you have 1 through 12. You can see how some of these neighborhoods sort of cross what we think of as a subdivision or neighborhood. So that's how they sort of differ. You can see the issue with this type of grouping. For example, in neighborhoods 4, 8, and 12, where you have the standard properties like in a neighborhood, and then you have these big parcels of land. So this is why you definitely want to have that protest conversation every year. Okay, so let's get technical. I know we've talked a lot already, but so let's get technical. So what do? They take these neighborhoods and they analyze the market year over year to sort of come up with these trends. These trends then yield themselves to establishing a neighborhood modifier. This modifier is then added to every property across this neighborhood group to come up with whatever your property value is for the following year. This is part of that mass appraisal process. The problem with this is if one middle factor neighborhood modifier is used to come up with these values, you're going to have a bunch of properties that are not are overvalued, which is the issue, and then undervalued, which you're lucky if you fall in that grouping. The good part about mass appraisal, though, is that they do have this margin of error that allows them to have the ability to make adjustments. Now, that margin of error is 95 to 105% of market value. Why is this relevant? Because last year in 2020, we saw that Williamson County valued all properties at 95% of market value, which makes our job a little bit harder because there's not a whole lot of room for movement, but it does happen. And I bet it was nice when they were making concessions for COVID last year. So yay for that. So here's what that looks like, that distribution, how that neighborhood modifier sort of is applied across all the properties. We have 3 sections. We have, let's start with the easiest one. Section B, this is where you're going to find all your fairly assessed or fairly valued or properly valued properties. These properties, if you go to protest, you may get a little bit of movement in that value, maybe a couple $1,000s, maybe not. It really just depends. Then you have section C, which is everybody who sort of falls below that median value. These properties that are considered or what we call undervalued. So there's not going to be a whole lot of movement at all, honestly, on these values because you're already below the median. Now, you fall in section A and you don't protest, oh no. Section A properties are those that are overvalued. So these are the people that are going to protest and they're going to have success and they're going to get their value renormalized and put back in that B column. The whole point of sort of showing you guys this is to just say, you never know where your property is going to fall on this spectrum. So if you don't protest, you don't know. And what's the harm in protesting? There's no disadvantages to the process. So make sure you file a protest. Okay, lots of words on this slide, but it's just basically giving you a summary of everything that we've talked about. So remember, the appraisal that you get or the valuation for your property is simply just an opinion of value. Yours is different from mine, as the appraiser's is going to be different from everybody else's. The value that you get on this notice is going to be a value of the property as of January 1st. So it's not the day they issued the value or even last year, it's January 1st. These properties also will get a new valuation at least once every 3 years. That's not necessarily the case right now, where we're seeing lots of transaction and a lot of market movement. And that's why you're going to get a new valuation every year. But it can happen where they just don't reappraise a section. And then I think really the main takeaway from all of this is you don't know where your property falls on that bell curve spectrum. So make sure you file a protest. There's no harm in doing it. And don't get discouraged if you don't get a reduction. It just means that you are already fairly valued or already undervalued for the neighborhood of properties. Okay, so let's talk Siena. Well, more general, let's talk, Williamson County. So this data is pulled from MLS. Basically, what it's telling us is that property values over the last couple of years have insanely increased. Williamson County rose just over 21% from last year alone. This is huge. You might ask yourself, well, why are we seeing all this growth? Well, there's a lot of great things. Central Texas is experiencing, huge economic outlook, job opportunities, and location factors that you just don't find everywhere else. So there's a lot of benefits, but it also brings higher property taxes. So there's sort of a trade-off here. So I think what's important now is to sort of talk about the different types of properties and things to look out for and questions to ask and things like that. So recently purchased homes. What's really important to remember about recently purchased homes is you set the market value for your house. There's no better comparable than your house alone. So if you pay a specific amount, that's what the value of the house is. Another great thing sort of about Texas is that we're a non-disclosure state, which just means that you may not have your purchase price available for everybody to take a look at, which can work in your favor if you paid more than what the county assesses your home at. So there's trade-offs there too. I think the important question to ask is, well, how's my tax bill going to change? Because it's all about money. If it's a new build property, which we'll talk about in just a second, there's a lot of changes that are going to come. And I know Siena is a relatively newer community, so this may actually affect a lot of y'all. So we'll talk about that in a second. The second thing to sort of look out for are the new improvements that either yourself or the previous homeowner made right before you purchased it. If there's a new pool, new outdoor kitchen, interior renovations, things like that that are going to add to your value that didn't exist last January 1st when you got your value, that's going to increase your property taxes. So those would be things to look out for as well. And then I guess we should talk about exemptions, because those are a really big deal. If you purchase a home, that exemption from the previous owner is going to fall off and you're going to lose all those benefits. So we'll talk about filing your own exemptions and making sure that you get all of those benefits moving forward. Okay, so new communities or new construction properties, here's some things to look out for. Number one, we're valuing the property as of January 1st. So it's very possible that the tax bill that you were prorated on when you purchased this new construction home was only based off of the land. So that's going to affect your property tax bill moving forward. If on January 1st last year, it was land and maybe a slab for your foundation, you'll be charged for the slab, but not the whole house. So that's going to affect you moving forward. The second thing is going to be that builder discount. That's going to be an exemption that builders get just, automatically, basically, from the county. That's going to severely cut down on those annual taxes that are due. But remember, previous exemptions fall off, and you have to sort of apply for your own. So those are two things to really watch out for. In the second year, you're probably going to have to pay property taxes based on the entire value of the home. So that's the beautiful house that you live in, that's the yard, that's, everything that the county takes into consideration when coming up with that value. Plus, you lose that builder's discount. So not only is your property not getting that exemption, but you also have all these extra structures that you're having to pay for. So what can you do? File your exemption, your homeowner's exemption, which we'll talk about in just a second. make sure you protest and make sure that you're providing relevant information or evidence to either your firm or the appraiser when you go to protest. Okay, homestead exemptions. Please file for your homestead exemption if you own a home in Texas that you actually live in. You don't rent it out or anything like that, but please file for it. This is going to be the most common form of savings. If you lived in your home as of January 1st and you have that valid Texas driver's license with this address, great, file for it, don't miss out. You have to file for these exemptions by April 30th, which is in what, 8 days. So if you haven't already, please make sure that you do that. If you file for your exemption after this date, then you're not going to get your benefits until the following year. So why miss out? So we've talked about this exemption and the benefits, but what are those benefits? Well, two major things come out of this. Number one, you have a 10% cap. We just talked about how Williamson County increased values about 21% this year. That 10% cap is only holding you responsible for the additional 10% on your value. The 11% that sort of comes from 10 to 21, you're not responsible for paying property taxes on that right now. So that's going to be a huge benefit, especially in a year like this. The second thing is going to be the tax credits. This is going to take off a portion of the property value that you don't have to pay property taxes on. And those are automatic. Once you get approved and you don't change the deed or refinance or anything like that, you keep these benefits every year moving forward. One-time thing, totally free to file for. Another thing that sort of comes along with homeowners or homestead exemptions is you can add these extra exemptions if you qualify, which will differ county to county. So I would reach out to them, see what you qualify for. They have senior discounts, veteran discounts, solar discounts, things like that. So ask and file. Okay, so we've talked a lot about, okay, here's a protest, make sure you protest, but I haven't shown you any real proof of why it works or what it looks like. These are just a couple of examples of clients of ours that have been with us for a really long time. And you can sort of see how these savings add up. You know, maybe $100 every year is not a whole lot of money in the moment, but $100 for 4, 5, 6 years, that's a lot of money. That's also money you didn't have to pay the government, which kind of is nice in my opinion. Another thing that this is sort of going to show you is that even property values that you think may be right can qualify for a reduction. We've had clients that started out at a really high value and we were able to get them lower than they were even years ago. So this is sort of that management process that makes this or protesting so valuable. And then if you just want to check out some more of our success stories, you can go to texastaxprotest.com and you can see how even across dollar values, there's opportunity for savings. So it doesn't have to be, you know, $1 million home in order to see some sort of reduction or some sort of like significant savings. Okay, I'm going to brag on my company for just a little bit. There's a lot of great things that are, you know, that we have going for us. So bear with me. So Texas Tax Protest really values relationship building, and we've seen how that's been super beneficial with the counties with COVID-19. We sort of had to find a process that worked, trying to do things in a virtual format because they were trying to put in safety protocols. This helped us out a lot when we found pretty good success. We also do all the work for you. So not only do you get to save some money potentially at the end of this process, but you don't have to do anything. We file your protest, build your case, and then of course, attend all your hearings and meetings. Another great thing is you don't pay us if we don't save you some money in property taxes. So we work purely on contingency. You don't pay me up front. And if we can't reduce your property value because you're already fairly assessed, there's no fee. Couple other things that are really good for us. My team is amazing. My support team are all based in Texas. They're all extremely knowledgeable, and they have all these great resources that allow you to connect with us, like texting. I don't know a whole lot of companies that do texting. We also use DocuSign for ease of sign up. And then of course we have a property questionnaire so that you can supply us with that additional information should you wish to participate throughout this process. Another great thing about us is my agents. We have over 100 years worth of experience that really adds to why we're so successful. And by successful, I mean 92% success rate for our first year clients, which is huge. My team's comprised of people from all sorts of backgrounds. We have a CFA CPA. We have former county appraisers and appraiser managers. We have real estate agents. We have investors. We have everybody is licensed on my team. So that just goes to tell you that we all have the education and the background to sort of enhance our team and our ability to do our job extremely well. Oh, and we're part of the best places to work. So people that want to talk to us, we're all in a really good mood all the time. So just saying. Okay, so let's say you do choose to file a protest and you get the feedback from the county saying, okay, hey, provide me your evidence and let's talk about it. Well, what kind of evidence do they need? There's a couple of things you can provide. You can provide photos, which is going to talk about the condition of the home, to show any damages that you're seeing, or outdated areas of the home. Those types of things are going to be really valuable. You can provide your closing documents, should you choose to. That's just basically going to set the market for your home. So if you paid less for it, give it to them if you want to. Appraisals. There's a ton of reasons why somebody would get an appraisal, but that's an appraisal for, let's say, a refinancing purpose, or when you go to buy your home. That's a fee appraisal, and that's looking at the property as an individual, and that's going to set your market as well. So you can have that conversation with the appraiser saying, okay, look, I actually had somebody out to take a look at the house. Here's the value that they've sort of come up with, and you can have that conversation. What else is really valuable? Repair estimates. What does that tell us? The cost to repair, the cost to cure. Repair estimates are really valuable because they can tell the appraiser, look, I have $15,000 worth of damage. Let's talk about a fair settlement on this, because the reality at the end of the day is I have to fix this if I go to sell my house. Because sometimes in my experience, I've talked to appraisers and they've said, oh, okay, you need to replace 15 windows in your house. Well, I'll give you $5,000 off. And you're like, okay, hold on. I know windows are more expensive than that. So that's why that type of information is a good idea. And then for my investors out there, there's a couple other items on here that can be really helpful to either your agent or when you're presenting your case to the appraiser. That just helps sort of people make decisions. Should you guys choose to use TTP or Texas Tax Protest, we send you guys a property questionnaire that will literally walk you through the types of evidence that we think are most valuable to a protest. So this can always enhance your case, and we do highly recommend that you fill it out. Okay, last couple of slides, I promise. So now let's talk about if you choose to go through this process on your own. Remember, you have to file a protest by May 15th, this year, May 17th, or 30 days after the notice date. What's going to happen after you file this protest is you're going to get a hearing date set for the ARB or formal hearing. Keep this letter, please. This letter is going to have procedural information. It's going to tell you what to do with your evidence, et cetera, et cetera. So don't throw it away. If you hire a firm to do this, they're going to attend this hearing for you, and they're going to get a copy of this letter. But if you get it, just let them know, hey, I got this letter, it says this. We also talked about the other option for protesting, which is the informal meeting, which is that one-on-one with the appraiser. The time period between when you file your protest and that ARB hearing, this is when you want to go talk to them. This is going to be your opportunity to have that conversation, talk about your evidence, and have it be, in my opinion, more successful, but not always. Give it a shot. If you hire a firm, again, remember, they're going to do all this for you. You don't have to show up. You don't have to go to talk to anybody. That's literally our job. And then just as a passing note, whenever you guys agree on that value, if you come to an agreement, you're going to get a piece of paper that certifies that value and puts it in place. We either call this a settlement waiver or an ARB ruling. Okay, recap real quick, all those deadlines we talked about because we just want to make sure we don't miss anything. January 1st, this is when your property value is established. Anything after this date may or may not have any effect on your property value for protesting purposes. January 31st, this when your taxes are due. Please make sure that those get paid. April 15th, this is when you're going to get your notice. We just talked about how you guys got those last week or whatnot. Tells you all the important information for why it's important to protest. April 30th, 8 days from now, this is when your homestead exemption applications are due. If you miss this date, you got to wait an entire year. May 15th, this is your filing deadline for protesting. If you miss this date, there's nothing I can do to sort of help you out in this case. And then lastly, October to November, this is when your tax statements are going to go out. This is when you actually pay the property taxes. This is when you know what you're going to owe. And then very lastly, we sort of provide you guys with the information for the nearest central appraisal districts in your area. This is just contact information. And then of course their website to go look up your own property and those details, things like that. You can reach out to me if you have any questions on these, but it's kind of a cool website if you just want to dig around. Okay, I'm done talking about like all the technical stuff, so we can go to the game. Kyle, do you want me to just read them off and then you choose who's raising their hand?
Sure. So I have,
Okay.
I have some Starbucks gift cards that TTP has provided. Since you all are muted, why don't we, if you know the answer and you want to try to answer, I think there is a hand raising feature, and then I'll call on someone that's a hand raised and give the chance to win an award.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Okay, let's get started. Question number 1, a protest must be filed by blank of the tax year or how many days after the notice is received?
Let's see. All right. Ragdoll. So I think I saw your hand first. Unmute your thing and try to give an answer. Let's see what you got.
April the 15th or 30 days after you receive it.
Ooh, so close.
Right. I think Kelly was next. Kelly?
Okay, it's actually, well, I noticed it's May 17th, but I think she said May 15th or 30 days after the notice.
Oh my gosh, you were paying attention. You guys are awesome. Yes, correct.
All right. All right, Kelly.
Okay, next.
All right, everyone put their hand down. Well, I guess I can put everyone's hand down.
Oh, I'll go back. Nobody read.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, next question. An appraisal is the process of developing an blank for real property.
All right. I think I saw Wes and Ty Edwards first. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
An opinion of value.
Yes, an opinion of value.
All right, and before we go to the next one, I would say if you already have won one, let's let someone else answer first, just to spread the wealth.
Just to spread the wealth. I like this. Okay, can I go?
Go ahead.
Okay, next question. This is a 3-parter, but you guys got this. We need to know what sections of this bell curve apply to each portion. So which section is an overvalued property, which section is a fairly valued property, and which section is an undervalued property.
All right, Monica. Maybe she's the only person brave enough to answer this one. Go ahead, Monica.
I have to raise my hand.
A is overvalued, is
I don't see it.
fair value, and C is undervalued.
One more time, you were breaking out. I think you're right, though.
A is overvalued, B is fair valued, and C is undervalued.
You're amazing. That's exactly right.
All right. Now, those of you, I will say, those of you who I don't have your complete information here, I'll try to connect with you afterwards. But if you don't receive a contact from me, reach out to me. I have your names written down. So anyways, all right, go ahead.
Okay, next question. A blank exemption is the most common form of tax savings for homeowners in Texas.
All right, I think I had Marion Freiberger first.
It's the homestead.
Homestead is correct.
All right, getting on a roll now.
Yeah, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
All right,
Okay, next question. You must have occupied your home as of what date in order to qualify for the homestead exemption for the current tax year?
Show had a hand up first. Got to unmute.
Oh, sorry. January 1st.
January 1st, good job. That's exactly right.
These most people must have kept good notes. I love it.
Me too.
All right, that's we're halfway done. We got that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just all of our contact information. I think you said you were gonna attach the PowerPoint for like future viewings. So if you guys ever need us, you can either email, call us, text us, all those things, and we're definitely here. But we'll go ahead and open the floor for any questions. I think Blair and I are gonna answer all of those, so feel free to shoot away, guys.
Hang on 1 second. Before we do that, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to drop the deck into the chat. Now it will get sent out with the notes, but I'll go ahead and drop the deck into the chat right now. So if some of you want to grab it right now, you're welcome to. But yes, now is a great time for some questions. And if no one else has questions, I have questions. So why don't we raise our hands for questions, and I'll call on you and then unmute you and go ahead. So Kelly, why don't you start off?
Okay, I have 2 questions for you. So we were new at this our first year, and we missed disputing our taxes from last year. And are we able to, I know we can't get a credit or anything like that, but are we able to negotiate up to a certain point, or is it just whatever you come up with is fair market if y'all do it?
You mean like a back and forth? If you were to hire us, we would come to you saying, hey, this is what we think the value is. Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that we operate is really, we hope that you guys would trust us to be able to come up with fair market value on it. We've done a lot of research and put together, some technology that's been able to really help us out in being accurate. So we wouldn't necessarily reach out and say, hey, this is the value that we're shooting for. Just know that my agents don't get paid unless we save you some money. And of course, they want to get paid as much as possible. So we're going to be super aggressive and go for the value that we think is not only the lowest, but the most fair.
Okay, and I got a follow-up question really quick. We refinanced this year. Well, actually refinanced, I guess, like last year. But I didn't know we had to reapply for the homestead. It states on my appraisal value that I do have homestead, but should I go ahead and reapply again?
No, so if it's on your note, if it's on your notice, it should be there. The contact information that that was in the deck for the different central appraisal districts, you can double check that it's on there, or reach out to me and I can check for you. The reason that I made that comment originally is sometimes with refinancing, the deed can change because an additional loan holder is on there. So they'll add somebody and the exemption will fall off. But if it's on your notice, you should have it, but I would double check.
But if we hire you to do it, you would check that anyways, right?
Not automatically, but it's super easy to check out. So we could do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Angela, you're up. Go ahead.
Hi, I was late to the party, but I did have a couple of questions, and one as a result of what Kelly just asked. If there was a modification on the loan, would we have to reapply for a homestead? And maybe that's not something you could answer, but I just thought I'd ask since she just asked that.
No, that's okay. So if there was not somebody, Really, it's really hard to tell. What
Okay.
I would recommend in these cases is just to double check on the Central Appraisal District website. A lot of times we find in like divorces, when refinances have to happen, somebody drops off and you have to refile. But it really just depends. As far as modifications like rate and stuff like that, no, that would not affect if you got to keep your homestead or not.
Okay, and then,
I could make a comment on this too. So essentially, if there was no change to the owner name, then your homestead wouldn't fall off.
okay.
It's only if there's a change to the owner name that the county has you listed as.
Okay, well, that's good. And then the second question is, I've been in my house 5 years. I've never really protested my taxes because to my uneducated eye, what these seemed okay. And I was just kind of going by what people were selling their houses for. And like I said, I missed things. So I don't know what you guys had said earlier, but I did notice this year for the first time, they actually had other houses in my appraisal, maybe like 6 houses or whatever. And, comparison houses, I guess. And so I don't know if that's their attempt to show that, they are a little bit more accurate. Just want to know your guys' thought on that. Since for me, it's new that they sent, market values or whatever in my notice.
Sure. I'll start off and then Blair, you can always jump in. So yeah, that's probably exactly what it is. They're like, hey, look, here's the proof that your value's okay. Like maybe you don't have to protest. What I would say and what I would recommend to everybody, regardless of that information, is to file anyway, just to make sure that your value is fair. And I don't know this, but it could be that they're just including the highest valued properties to be like, oh, you're undervalued, so don't worry about it. When that may not be the case, or they may not be even the most similar properties to yours. Like I said, well, I don't know if you heard, but protesting is not going to hurt your value or be detrimental to either reselling or anything like that. So I would recommend going through the process anyway.
Okay, yeah, one of the houses, my neighbor across the street, and we have the exact same floor plan is what they used, and so I know what her house sold for. So, it'll be interesting. Thank you.
Of course.
Well, until anyone else has any questions, I have a few that I hope you can answer for us, Sarah. I've heard some people ask that or refer to that when you went to protest your valuation, that if they felt during either the review board or maybe the informal, I think it's only the review board, but if they actually felt that your property was undervalued, that they could raise it. Is that false?
That's a great question. So recently, and I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but Texas instated new law that says that your property value cannot be increased in an ARB hearing. So that's not a risk that you run by filing anymore.
And it wouldn't, that risk also would not be present during the informal review as well?
Correct.
Okay, good. I wasn't aware of that new law. Okay. I saw something in your notes about retroactive exemptions. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is and when someone might be looking at doing something like that?
Sure. So as far as what Texas law says or property code says is you can file for up to 3 years of retroactive exemptions and refunds. Of course, this is only for people who qualify, but basically it allows you to recoup the overpayments that you had made for up to the last 3 years by not having the homestead exemption in place. Now, those deadlines are a little bit different and the process can be a little complicated if you're not quite sure what that looks like. What I would recommend in these situations is to reach out to the county and say, hey, I haven't had a homestead exemption. This has been my primary residence for X number of years. What are my options of putting that back in place? And they should be pretty helpful.
Okay, thank you. Let me see what other ones I had. If let's say that someone wanted to explore this on their own and start doing it, taking some of the tips you did, and then we got overwhelmed by it and we wanted to have you guys take over. Is that an option, or is it just one way or the other?
Also a good question. So
and
the short
I haven't been fed these. I haven't been fed these. Just for the record.
Don't lie. No, I'm just kidding. So that's a great question. For us, and the short answer is no, we wouldn't be able to take over. And there's a lot of things that are sort of going into that decision. In the past, when we've tried to accept cases like this, the county has just not worked with us in getting us coded to be able to actually represent you. And then a lot of times the homeowner's protest is going to supersede anything that your agent or representative does. So we could attempt to do it and then still not be able to hear your case, and then you've missed your opportunity to protest. So no, we wouldn't be able to take over at this point.
Okay.
How do you file the homestead exemption? Where do we go?
How to file it?
Yes, and where?
Was that the question? Okay. So it's totally free to do online. I'm not quite sure if Williamson has an online portal, but the form is
Yes,
available online.
Yes, they do.
They do? Okay, perfect. So the online portal is going to be the best way to do that. What I assume is that the form is auto filled out. You just have to electronically sign and attach copies of driver's licenses. So if you go to the Central Appraisal District website that was in a previous slide, you should be able to find it pretty easy.
Uh,
All right, any other questions? I'm putting,
Yeah, and I got another one.
go ahead.
So I noticed that the assessment that they gave us, we just purchased our home in October. And I noticed that the assessment they gave us is pretty much the price we paid for the house. Is that normal?
Yeah, and the reason I would say yes to that is because the county has to do a good job of sort of doing all the market research, and those properties, the values that they come up with have to fall within that margin of error. So it would be within a couple $1,000s of what you paid, if not even a couple $100s. So yes, I would say that's pretty normal. But sometimes you're going to see that's not the case. So if anybody's purchased a home and you're like, hey, that didn't happen to me, that's okay too. That happens also.
Would you, and I know you say you should protest no matter what, but does that seem like, it seemed like since that's what we paid for it, that would be a fair market value? What's your take on that?
That's a good question. So you're right. It is fair market value because that's what you paid for it, and your house is the best comparable for itself. I would probably still protest. And if you're going to hire a firm, it sort of just puts them in place to be able to do this for you year over year. What probably will happen if you file the protest is they'll say, okay, well, what did you pay for it? And you're like, well, I don't have to tell you that. Let's say it's, just a little bit over what you paid for the home, the assessment is over what you paid for the home, then you could tell them and get it lowered that way. Or you could just say, well, tell me, what the equity of the property is. And then you can have that conversation too. That opens a whole new can of worms. Sorry, guys. But there's different things that you can talk about, and the appraiser will go through that conversation with you. More than likely, you won't get a reduction in this case, but I think it's still worth it.
All right.
Sarah, I have a question. This is Marion, and we have homestead and disabled veteran. Do you know if you can have more than 2 exemption types, or is it just limited to 2?
That's a good question. It used to be that you could only have 2 types, the homestead plus whatever that additional exemption was. I know there are, what am I trying to say? Specifications on, well, you can't have an over 65 and a disability exemption and a homestead in some places. But if you qualify for the homestead, disability, and let's say solar, I think you can still do that. I think,
Okay.
but I would contact your appraisal district and ask.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Yeah.
All right.
I have
DJ,
question.
go ahead, DJ.
Uh-oh, are we
And,
muted?
all right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
In the presentation, there was a mention of solar and there were some other et cetera exemptions that could be taken. What are some examples of those et cetera?
So that's going to differ wherever you live, really. Sometimes we see people that have a ton of land that want to file for ag. That's really kind of a very specific exemption. There's different levels sometimes of disability or veterans exemptions that would qualify under that. There's also historical exemptions, but that's also getting more complicated, and there's lots of qualifications for that. But your county will have a whole list of others that you may qualify for.
Okay, and one more question. Your fee, was a percentage or is there a set flat fee?
Good question. So we work on contingency, which is a percentage of whatever the estimated tax savings are on the back end. So there's no deposit due up front, and we don't really have a minimum. So if we're not successful, you don't pay me anything.
Okay.
Okay, did you say if you weren't successful that it didn't cost? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's correct. So if we can't reduce the property value so that you see tax savings, you don't pay me a dime for services, and my agent's already done all the work.
Okay, thanks.
Quick question for you. So sometimes there's can you talk a little bit more about who the appraisal review board is? I guess sometimes there's a perception that you walk into the room and all these people are against you. Or is there supposed to be some level? I mean, is it citizens? Are they hired by the county? How does that work?
Sure, good question. So the appraisal review board members, those 3 panel members that sort of make a ruling on your value, they're citizens of the community. They're independent, so they don't work for, and they're not necessarily paid by the county to do this job. They're really there to be sort of a third party, unbiased set of people that just consider all the evidence that have been put up. So they don't work for the county, they don't work for the agent. They just, it's kind of like jury members, right? They're members of the community. They're not paid. They just sort of make a ruling.
Okay. And one other question, you talked about how during the calendar that after the values are finalized, I think it was in the June timeframe, and at that point is when the counties and the taxing districts will set their rates.
Mm-hmm.
They'll finalize their rates. And this might not be a question for you guys, but in an environment like this where we expect values to rise significantly, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of our jurisdictions are spending a ton more money. Hopefully if our tax values go up 20%, that doesn't mean necessarily that they're spending 20% more money. Would we normally expect that if our values are rising this much, that probably our tax rates might go down slightly? Or is that just too high expectations?
Too high expectations. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know, Blair or Odette, if you guys have any insight on this, or sort of what the past has looked like in situations like this. But I think that would come with just a conversation with your representatives and what their budgetary needs are. Because it may be that they don't modify taxing rates a whole bunch, but I don't know.
And I can kind of speak on that a little bit. In theory, yes, it should be like that, where if values increase and budget stays the same, then the tax rate should stay the same or decrease. But in theory, that's the way it should happen, but it just doesn't end up happening that way. And a lot of times we see tax rate increases, but it's really just specific to each taxing jurisdiction and what their budget is set at. So it depends.
All right, thank you. Let's see, who got some other questions? Monica, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. So I got my appraisal protested online. They came back at me saying that it was appraised appropriately and that I can either agree or decline their appraised value. I declined it, and then I think it says something about an informal hearing. I think that's what it said, that something would be scheduled or I would need to schedule. Now, am I at a point where it's too late to go with you guys? It's kind of a follow-up from a previous question.
Yeah, so in this case, because the homeowner's protest is going to supersede an agent's, it would be too late for you to use us specifically. I don't really know what the processes are for other firms, but we don't want to say, hey, we're going to take on your case. You know, yes, we'll show up, we'll do all this, and then not be able to do it. And that's sort of the risk that we run.
So at what point would I have, I mean, would I get you guys, should I have gotten you guys involved?
As soon as you got your notice, or maybe even a little bit before that. It just has to be before you file that initial protest.
Got it. Okay, so you guys have to file the protest, not me.
Correct.
Okay, I understand. So if I were to go now, knowing that, that I would have to do it myself at this point, the informal meeting that I would be attending, is that the ARB with the 3 individuals that talked about?
Sure. So Blair, I don't know if they also schedule an informal on this, but if it's truly an informal, that's the one-on-one with the county appraiser. You would then, after that, accept an ARB hearing, which is that formal with the 3 panel members. Do you know, Blair, if they file online protests and get an offer, that they can still go in and do a one-on-one?
So have you specifically talked with an appraiser about your property yet?
No.
Okay, so you'll have that opportunity first before it goes to a board hearing. This is just their initial offer. And so once they have that scheduled with an appraiser, you can call them, or you can go in person, meet with the appraiser and try to, you know, come to a reasonable value. And if you don't, then you'll have your ARB hearing at that point.
And when I talk to the appraiser, that's when I bring whatever evidence that I have to
Right.
support lowering the, okay, got it.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I know we have at least one more question. Kelly has one. I thought I saw one other person as well, but before we do that, it is 7:30. We've been going an hour. I want to at least do our drawing we have a door prize for a $25 gift card, also provided by TTP. And I do have a couple more gift cards that are left over here from $10 Starbucks ones. So we'll draw for those. And then those that want to leave at this point can leave. Otherwise, we'll stay on here for a few more minutes for anyone that has questions. So first of all, for the $25 gift card, not looking. Shalandra. Did I say that right?
It's Shalonda, yes.
Shalanda, okay. All right, you have won the $25 gift card. Put your name down.
Did you say which Shalandra? Because
Oh, did you say Shalonda or Chandra?
So Shalandra.
Oh,
That's me.
Miss
oh, okay.
Sandra Frederick.
That's
Oh, yeah,
me.
that's her. That's not me.
Oh no. It's like, no. Well, maybe you'll win one of these now. All right. And for the last two, hopefully it's 2 people that don't have ones already. Jenny Lonberg. You hadn't answered any ones. Yep. Okay, great. Jenny, you won one of those. Great job, Jenny. Thanks for being here tonight. And the last one is Alex B. Alex Berry. All right. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you all for being here. TTP, I can't say thank you enough for you guys for being here and providing all this great information. I learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot about this already. First, this shows why you guys are the experts and why I need to ask you the questions and not just answer them all myself. But for those of you that are going to take off, thank you for joining. I will be emailing out the information. If you don't get it, follow up with me. But those of you who want to stay, we have time for a few more questions as long as TTP can stay with us. So,
Yeah, of course.
Kelly, why don't you go ahead?
I just had a quick question. Is it, which one of the 3 that you have on here for questions and answers should we contact if we do want to have y'all take care of this?
I don't mind being the main point of contact for this. You can always reach out to me, phone, email, or text. And then of course, we're here for questions or to sign you up if you want to go through the process with us.
Okay, what is your contact? Is it some?
Oh, is it hidden? It's Taylor@texastaxprotest.com.
Oh, I see it now. I see it
You
now.
got it?
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Of course.
All right, let's see. Monica, you have another question?
No, I'm sorry. Let me lower my hand. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Is there anyone else there that has another question? I need to go through my notes to make sure.
I got one. I don't have my hand raised though. It's Luis. And Kyle.
You guys raise your hand first. I'm kidding. Go ahead, Luis. Glad to have you
I'll
here.
turn my camera on. You can see my hand if you want. Hey, no, I'm trying to understand like how the fees work. I was trying to look, I think I'm in your all's website. I just understanding how y'all get paid with the fees and all that. Just if we go with y'all, just trying to get a little more information on that.
Yeah, sure. So, like we said earlier, we work on a percentage of whatever those tax savings are. I think Kyle's going to send out our marketing letter for you guys, and it'll say exactly what all that is. But how we calculate them, just for reference, is we would take the reduction in property value, multiply that by the current tax rate that is set at that time, and then find those tax savings that you're not having to pay. And then we would multiply that by the percentage that we've agreed on. And then I guess I can just share, it's 40% of whatever those tax savings are. So
Okay.
for example, if we save you $500 on your property taxes, then that would be a $200 invoice. If we save you $100, it's a $40 invoice.
No, that makes sense. Cool. That's kind of that's perfect. That's exactly what answers my question. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
So this is Stephanie. Yeah, this is Stephanie. I'm on the phone.
Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
I'm looking at my notice of appraised value, and I have the homestead exemption already. And of course, they're, taxing me right at the 10% cap. But I want to know, say this year, my total market value, I'm going to, just round it, but 310,000. But of course, my assessed value with the homestead, 279. So next year, is my total market value, showing for 2021 going to be the 310, or is it going to be what I'm being taxed at, the 279?
You're talking for 2022?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. And I'm sure everybody's sort of thinking the same thing, like what happens now? So there's a lot of things that can happen in this case. They could continue to raise the market value depending on how the external market is reacting. And in that case, then your taxable value or the assessed value, that 379 that you mentioned, that'll go up another 10% because that's how it would work. If the district decides, hey, I'm not changing values this year, you could still see an increase in your property taxes because the ultimate goal is to make that assessed or taxable value meet whatever the market value is. And the maximum increase that they can issue you is 10%. So you're automatically going to see that increase until those numbers match. In the event that the market severely slows down or the county decreases your value, you could see that increase is pretty small if they don't drop it all the way to what your current assessed value is at that 379. I think that's what you said, 279. I can't remember. Or it could even fall below that, and then you don't have an increase, you have a decrease in property taxes. So the situation really just depends on what that looks like. But what I think will probably happen is they'll increase the taxable value by the maximum 10% until they meet.
So let me see if I understand this correctly, Sarah, and please correct me.
Yeah, sorry, that was a lot.
Let's say that my assessed value my appraised value with the county went up 15% this year.
Okay.
My taxes will only go up 10% this year. And if nothing else changes, the following year, they'll add that remaining 5%. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Sorry.
If I have 15%, it still helps me to protest my taxes. If, let's say, I can get it down to that 10%, it might not save me on my tax bill this year, but it will next year because they won't be then adding more on top of that following amount. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So you won't receive an automatic increase even if the market hasn't changed. That's correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Anything final from your team at TTP, Sarah or Odette, before we close out the meeting today?
No, I guess we just want to say thanks again for giving us this opportunity to share this information. We really value experiences like this. And we hope you guys will use this as a resource, even if you don't use us like as a protesting agent. So yes, please reach out to us. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and we hope we can do it again.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much. This wouldn't be possible without you guys and your expertise. For all my friends in Siena and the Round Rock area here, thank you for being a part of this meeting. If you have questions to follow up on, please reach out to Texas Tax Protest. If you have questions about Round Rock here, things in Siena, I'm always available, and my information is as well. So thank you everyone for being here. Have a great rest of the night. Have a great weekend. And I guess we'll see you around.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.